Okay. And good morning, PSWs and friends across Ontario and Canada. Welcome to PSW Podcast, where we come live to you guys every Friday at 11 a.m., where we talk about all of the ins and outs of the PSW world, the gray area, and everything else that happens there. My name is Miranda Romanovich. I'm the CEO of the Ontario PSW Association and the Canadian Support Workers Association, and I'm also host of PSW Podcast. And yet again today, I am joined by my co-host and Chief Operating Officer of both OPSWA and CANSWA, Ian De Silva. And we are streaming live here on Facebook and, of course, on TikTok. And welcome to everyone who's joining us today. Today, we're talking about something called title protection of the personal support workers. So, Ian, do you want to take it away?
Yes, it's one of those terms that when we say out loud, most people that we speak with, including doesn't matter who they are, their eyes glaze over. Very few people know what title protection is. Totally get it. And today we're going to talk about why it's important for personal support workers and why we believe it's a core issue that results in a lot of the issues that we're seeing right now. So, in a nutshell, Miranda, let's just start that there. So, title
Sure.
protection is what?
So, title protection. So, we're going to break down what title protection is. So, we're going to start with that. So, title protection is like what the nurses have and the doctors have, that you cannot call yourself a nurse. You cannot call yourself a doctor unless you are registered, you've taken the course, you've passed the tests, you've done everything you can possibly do. Then you can call yourself a nurse or a doctor. In Ontario and across our wonderful nation, anybody who holds the PSW designation or those like the PSW, unfortunately, they do not have title protection. So, what does that mean that they don't have it?
Well, it means essentially that anybody, if they want, can declare themselves to be a personal support worker whenever they feel like they want to declare themselves to be a personal support worker. That is what it means in the effective reality of Ontario and Canada right now. So that means you go to school to be a PSW, whether or not you paid or not, you've invested time in that. You've invested at least about a year, let's say, in getting everything ready to go to learn this profession, to become a supporting player in our Ontario healthcare system. Yet when you go out to the profession to apply for jobs, you find that those jobs aren't necessarily available or that the competition is a lot harder than it should be. Why?
Yes.
Because of what we just said. Anybody can print up a degree, a diploma, and say they're a PSW and become a PSW, or just declare themselves to be a PSW and become a PSW. Barbers can't do it. Dog walkers can't do it. PSWs,
Hairdressers can't do it.
no one else
There's
can do it.
no one else can do it.
Just healthcare.
Just healthcare, which blows my mind. Seeing as how PSWs are literally the bedside care in across Canada. We do almost all of the bedside nursing, and it's really unfair that we don't have that title protection. How are you supposed to grow a profession that is so vital and not give them that recognition and that respect, that level of respect? Because it is a high level of respect to have title protection, right, Ian?
Well, it's a minimum at the very least. I mean, at the very least, this should be a minimum standard that we have in healthcare. And yet we refuse to allow ourselves that dignity. And I'm talking about our society. We are more than happy once you become old to be put into be warehoused and anyone can just take care of you. And that's fine with our society. And that's not fine with me, but that's fine with seems to be fine with what we're doing. Which is why we really believe, and we do continue to believe, you're not going to solve these problems in PSWs until you have some robust title protection for this role. And
So, like an entity like HESCAPOA would be the ones that would declare title protection of the PSW.
yeah,
That if legislation allows them to go that route,
if they have that.
if it's allowed. So that's where the protection of the public really comes into play. Not only just the recognition of personal support workers, because that is a vital thing and they deserve it, but it's also about protecting the patients, the residents, the clients, the people that PSWs care for every single day. I mean, if you think about it, like I mentioned on PSW podcast one of the last few weeks, 7 people were arrested in Ottawa for using fake certificates, calling themselves personal support workers. And if you are an employer and you don't do your due diligence, or you don't demand that they're OPSWA members, or you don't demand that they're HESCAPOA registrants, then you have no guarantee that that individual is actually a personal support worker. And so there's a lot of it's a multi-layered issue.
It is. It is.
It's very much so because not only can they just call themselves PSWs, but employers can also say there's also new titles.
That's true.
And
And they
you
do.
know, they do, and they do. What do we got out there? Resident care aides, home support workers, supportive care aides.
RCAs, resident care CCAs. There's about 70 in Ontario that are interchangeable right now. And now we're seeing they're trying to create a new home care position, which is balderdash. So a home care worker is meaningless. Sorry. But I mean, a home care worker, that is your population, that is a caregiver. So you need to be a PSW to be delivering care in Ontario Health and get Ontario funds to do so. That's our opinion in Ontario.
Just and that is most of the case when it comes to the public
It's
money that is funded down to the home care companies. Is it is stated that they must be actual personal support workers. However, because of the fact that there's not enough PSWs in one agency, as you always say, right, Ian? Then they go to the next agency and then the next agency, and by the time they actually find a PSW, that person might not be a personal support worker. And that's how they're kind of ensure, you know what I mean? That's how they're kind of
they're
playing the
downloading
game.
the term I think is downloading the responsibility, offloading it to the service provider contract holders, and they themselves download that responsibility to a subcontractor and so forth. And at the end of the day, the patient's left saying, well, who is this person at my bedside? They're a PSW because company outsourced B, C, and D, and we trust that that person is a PSW. And if they're not, we can take them to court. Won't, but we could.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
right. So, and that's assuming that someone is aware that the person in the scrubs is or is not a PSW.
See that though in stories like in retirement homes or
Well,
senior living facilities where individuals who are not PSWs in any name form, they're not even there in an official capacity, show up in scrubs and rob these elderly people blind.
all the time happens regularly.
Yeah,
Yes,
because they're wearing
correct.
scrubs.
We
So
trust.
that's why, I mean, it's so super important as, with OPSWA members that they wear their badge because it identifies them as a PSW,
Yes.
and I think that's really important. But, kind of going back to this whole thing is it's like we've been talking about the shift, we've been talking about changes in the PSW world. Ian and I talked about title protection for everyone watching for a very long time. That is something that we have really pushed to the
Yes.
forefront, but we kind of gave up on it, not gonna lie.
We had to
And
pause for a bit because there are competing priorities at the office. So,
a lot of competing
yeah.
priorities. So, but as of late, there's been conversations that we've had with individuals in power positions where title protection is now being brought back up into the conversation. So to us, that's a very positive thing.
Well, and just taking title protection back, okay, we see the impact that patients have that this is that the patients have from having unqualified care providers. Now, that's the one issue. But the issue that we don't talk a lot about is what is the impact, and then I'm actually going to talk about nursing. So don't just for a second here.
Go
Just for a
for it.
second. The nursing system relies on trained personal support workers in order for have their delegation actually followed. They need PSWs that understand what they're saying when they're giving directions to that. Now, that is the role that nurses and PSWs play in healthcare. If the nurse gives directions to a PSW that does not understand those directions, that nurse then either has to bear the responsibility of actually provide care for that patient if they have the time, which
Hmm.
is very unlikely the way the nursing system has been set up. They're doing a million other things.
Yeah.
This increases stress on the nurses because now they have care that they have to deal with that seeing the absence of neglect and care. And then you start seeing this burnout rate affecting nurses. I don't believe it's the core issue, but there is a significant link between nurses having to navigate untrained workers and having to delegate down to people that don't understand basics about what it is that they're supposed to be doing because so many people have been rushed out. Just want to go on that line about how it impacts the entire system going up because that stress continues up the line.
Absolutely. And we're supposed to be working with nurses in that capacity. That
Yep.
is why when we're in school for PSW, like for those of you watching that don't know, I'm almost 20 years as a personal support worker. And, I've worked with a lot of nurses over the years. And yeah, I had to understand what the heck they were talking about
Yes.
so they could properly delegate to me on how to do certain things for certain clients or residents or patients.
Yep.
And you talk about burnout with the nurses, absolutely. But let's look at what we've been hearing from our membership base, from PSWs that,
Yeah.
wonderful PSWs. And I thank you all for leaving all these messages and comments on our threads on social media, because we learn a lot from you guys. And what we're hearing is you guys are getting burnt out from getting that same issue where you're getting, people that are coming out of fake courses, or you get people that are coming out of courses who don't really know what they're doing. And the PSW then on the floor has to deal with that. So it's almost like these veteran PSWs or PSWs that have been there for like 3, 4, 5 years are now training their colleagues when they get into these long-term care homes or into the hospital or retirement home or home care. And it's taking a real toll on those PSWs because
Yep.
you already have 15 residents you have to care for. And now on top of that, you have to help your colleague teach them what the hell to do and
Yep.
also help take care of their 15 residents.
Damn right. That's exactly it. Yes.
Yeah.
Do that. How do you do
No.
that? And then you have PSWs coming in high heels and mini skirts.
Yeah, or long nails,
Long
long
nails, ready
nails.
to go to the party, and you're like, why are you, what are you doing here? You dress
My
like,
favorite story will always be from Taylor. She used to work with
that's
us
the
at the
story I'm trying to
association.
remember, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, she worked in the ICU at a hospital, and a new PSW was hired, and this new PSW showed up in jeans and a blouse for her first shift.
Yeah.
Like,
There,
what?
there's a gap. There's a gap. This is not what you wear. That's what you wear to be a great office employee. Great. PSWs, you got to wear be comfortable, safety. It's about being ready for the job. And there you see the gap there. But there's also the additional element of not having uh, trained healthcare workers, for example, fake PSWs, which are competing with real PSWs, which is why wages are so low, is the fact that when these PSWs have absences of care and there's this neglect, the trained PSWs feel responsible for
Yeah,
the absence of those care of that care. So if you have a patient suffering from neglect, it's not that PSW's fault; it's the minister's fault. We had this meeting yesterday. It's the minister's fault that these patients are being neglected. Why are you taking it upon yourself? The minister does not want title protection in long-term care. The minister wants to flood the market with cheap workers.
yeah,
That's what the regulations say. Like they don't care. Just have bodies on the floor, and that's all that matters. So we ask PSWs, remember, you are not responsible for the policy decisions that are set by ministers in long-term care. So this is the impact with why we need title protection. But that's
absolutely. Because title protection would bring almost a guarantee to some degree, a much higher guarantee, of properly trained, accountable personal support workers. I believe that when there is a form of accountability, when you're performing your tasks, I mean, I myself just put that accountability on myself when I was working as a PSW because
you would.
I didn't want to mess up. Like most PSWs do that. But unfortunately, there are PSWs out there that really don't care. They're in it for the job or the money, which makes me laugh every time I hear that. And they're just there to make a buck. And they really don't care what happens. Well, those are the PSWs where we need to see accountability happen. Once there's accountability and you can be charged, you can lose your license, all of those things, suddenly the profession rises to a different level.
It does.
And and I mean that's what HESCAPOA really at the end of the day is going to try to do is to put that public safety element into the PSW, which is something we've been actively advocating for over a decade as an association. Is it our complete vision of it? No, but I mean, it's you got to work with what you get, really, at the end of the day.
It's a work in progress. They're just
Mm,
starting the registry is just starting up right now. It is a very different type of regulatory structure than we had in the past. So as this moves forward, I mean, this is going to it does make require a bit more robust. Maybe there should be a title protection element in there, and there should be elements of there. And this is the thing we discuss all the time. Look, we get people asking us about research opportunities for personal support workers. How do we study this profession? What do we understand? I said the minute you study a PSW profession and publish the results, that results are completely useless. And they're like, well, what do you mean? How do you define a control group if you don't have title protection for that personal support worker? And the answer is, but they said they are. I'm like, well, I could just say I'm a nurse and participate in a nursing study. There is no academic capacity to study this profession in any meaningful term until this profession is defined. And that is something that we see right across the board, and why we can't get our nationally we can't get our heads around this population because we refuse to define it.
Let's talk about nationally really quick, just for our PSWs here in Ontario that maybe don't know what's happening nationally. For those of you that just joined us, we are OPSWA, Ontario PSW Association, but we are the largest chapter of the Canadian Support Workers Association. Ian and I figured at one point we weren't busy enough, so we took on the nation as well. Um, so if you're looking at Canada, and you're looking at the different roles in every province and territory in our nation, you're looking at New Brunswick, their PSWs. You're looking at Nova Scotia, their CCAs. You're looking at Newfoundland and Labrador and their PCAs. Then you get into, I'm not even going to go into Quebec because they have what do they call them there? Porters, something like that in
The
Quebec.
titles vary.
Yeah, it's all over the place in Quebec. Here in Ontario, we are personal support workers. We are home support workers. We're supportive care aides. We are resident care aides. We are health care aides. I digress. You go into Manitoba, they're health care aides. You go into Saskatchewan, they're CCAs. You go into Alberta, they're health care aides. You go into British Columbia, they're health care aides. You go to Northwest Territories and Yukon, they're PSWs. And we all do the same
Same
job.
job, exactly.
And it just blows my mind when we have PSWs like, so we can grandfather PSWs from other provinces to work in Ontario. That's something that was bestowed on us by the government a very long time ago. But if I were to go to Nova Scotia, I would have to take half of the course again.
Yeah.
If Alberta, same thing. Like it's Northwest Territories not though. Nope. Yukon, nope. That there we're good to go up there.
Yeah,
Um,
in Manitoba, there's not, you can kind of come and go in Manitoba.
well, yeah, because they do, right? They go from Manitoba to Kenora all the time. We have a
That's
lot of healthcare aides from Manitoba that work in Kenora in the long-term care homes there.
it's
Um,
an uphill battle, I think, is what we're trying to say when it comes to
yeah,
the
it's
amount of
what
titles you got to protect, and then I mean, we've even suggested to the federal government, you might want to have some sort of interprovincial license in order to align it with some of the nursing and doctors, but they're not interested. There's a large block of disinterest in having the title protection and making sure PSWs are PSWs, simply because there's too much of a profit motive right now in the system.
mm,
What we're fighting right now is we're not just fighting title protection. What we're fighting is employers' right to choose the cheapest labor that they can get, which is a standard capitalist approach. But this is healthcare, and we do have regulations, and this is not a business the way a normal business is, because this is a service industry. So I think there is a lot of there's a lot of opportunity for neglect of that title, and I think
oh,
there's a lot of issues that fight against it because of the profits that could be made from those situations. And
well, exactly. And can I just point out what really irritates me? There's something that we've been fighting against as an association for years, and that is the use of the word caregiver when talking about personal support workers.
yeah,
And are we caregivers? Yes, but we're medically trained caregivers. We are not caregivers. And a lot of bigger entities or whatever want to kind of clump the personal support worker underneath that caregiver title. And I absolutely refuse to
no,
allow PSWs to be underneath that title because a caregiver is someone who is doing it for free.
and the current advocacy that we're seeing federally for the caregiving title is simply designed to create a new issue so that the body that's representing the caregivers can receive a large amount of government money. So
Mhm.
it's useless. Like I honestly, I
Awful.
completely agree. It's like it's a shameless attempt to bilk the taxpayer out of money
Mhm.
to advocate for something that we're already doing, and that actually undermines the value of care. And we're going to speak. I'm firm on this point. So yeah, we don't recognize that at all.
No.
But they'll probably be successful, and they probably will get millions of dollars from the federal government simply because they're backed by a lot of other private charities, and that's the way it works. So
Yeah. No, it really boils my blood when PSWs get called caregivers.
Well,
I find that it downplays
it
the
does, Marita. It
yeah,
totally.
I mean, it totally downplays the role of the personal support worker. And again, it's going back to that whole anybody can do your job.
Exactly.
No, like, can we stop with this mindset in the public sector? Like, not anybody can be a PSW. I've seen it. Not anybody can do it. And not everyone wants to do it. I can't tell you how many times people say to me, "Oh my God, I don't know the hell how the hell your membership does that. That's just amazing. I could never do what they do." Exactly. So why are we treating it like we all learned this from our grandparents and that's why we're doing this job?
Right. Because
Do you
there's
see
a
what I mean?
presumption. Yeah, there's a presumption. And it's also, and I'm going to be the wrong one to say this, but it's also a presumption that women naturally know how to do these jobs. So it's just, they can just do it.
Like that
I
either.
see that all the time. And I see, and I don't really think it's noticed very much, but it's like, but as you put them with a woman, the woman will naturally provide care. I'm like, not the people I went to school with. Like, not my generation of women. They're lovely, but we're not trained to be caregivers. Like, we're not trained to go into it's a very specific role. And even in our own family lives, when someone got old, they went into medicine. So they went into medical care. So you're very correct. It's
It just blows my mind. And again, this makes it a bit of a feminist issue. Absolutely, because we
yeah,
represent, I
it
mean, our
is.
membership is like 98% female, and most PSWs is about 98% female, and or who identify as female. And so it's one of those situations where me as a female CEO, Ian can tell you guys stories about that. You
Oh yeah.
guys think we walk into a room and just because we're the professional association, we automatically garner respect. No, we get treated like a lot of you guys get treated, where we don't know what we're talking about, where they're just going to placate us because, and especially me being a female, I can't tell you guys how many times Ian has had to say people that my eyes are on my face.
Or they're asking me about like what we should do. I'm like, well, you could ask the CEO. She's right here at the table,
Yep, they won't even talk to me.
right
So
there.
this is a feminist issue.
Like,
It
and
absolutely is because and so maybe, moving forward as an association, we should really bring this forward for women's rights because women deserve to have this. PSWs deserve title protection. But because of the fact that we are 98% female, love my male PSWs, by the way, and I wish there was more of them because they are godsends to us.
we can split this. I mean, you have advocacy. This is for our female members. This is a rights issue, and it is. You're right. It is. It can be seen that way, and it is what it is. We do have a lot of male members, but it's the same fight that we're all fighting. It's the same one. So
Even the males have a hard time because a lot of them can't even get, like people don't want them to do their care or they can't get hired places because they're not female. Like I'm looking at like the PSW, in my opinion, as a profession, it has grown dramatically over the last 15 years that we've been doing OPSWA. However, we're still dealing with a lot of like almost 1950s, 1940s mindset when it comes to the role and the duties of a personal support worker. And, like I had a great conversation with a male PSW years ago, and he still is a member. And he was saying to me about how he got made fun of for being a male PSW and how everyone thought he had to be gay,
of course, yeah.
of course, right? To be working as a PSW. And that's not the case. He just really loved taking care of people.
Same for male nurses. That
Yeah,
I
same
get the
for male
same
nurses. Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
I when I went to school for legal administration, I was one guy in class. I was alone. Otherwise, no, there was one other guy. I forgot about Philip. Sorry. There's two others. I apologize. But it was weird. And people were like, "You're taking that course? That's like, no,
Yeah.
it's money. There's no such
It's
thing as a girls' course."
it's going how people view it, right? And how
Yeah, it's
public
like
has decided to view it, and it's not fair. And it's one of those things though that where the association as where our advocacy is concerned, where our lobbying is concerned, where our voice is concerned publicly, we need you PSWs to put your voice with ours. And that's the most important thing, because when we grew in numbers as an association, when I started barking real loud with media and started calling people out, that's when we started growing as an association and we really started taking our place. But it was because of your voices, PSWs, that we were able to get to this point. We take what you say and we take it to the decision makers. And that's the most important thing. So that's why we always say stand up for yourself in your workplace. Be proud to be a personal support worker, because even though we don't have title protection, not anybody, not just anybody, can do our job. And also, too, as well as without PSWs, and I mean this so strongly, our healthcare system will topple if we do not have
Oh yeah.
personal support workers. I love my nurses, but I do not see them wanting to do bedside care. The whole reason why PSWs were created was to take that away from the nurses so they could focus on what they needed to focus on.
I mean, you'd have to move the patients into the nursing station.
Absolutely.
Literally, I'm not even being sarcastic. That would be the only
No.
way it could be done. And even then, like we're on nursing topics now. This is not our area, but I I just couldn't imagine. I don't know how they would do it. I don't think they.
Highly respect the nurses. I highly respect what they do. We make great teams with them in a lot
Yeah,
of
no,
places. And
but
I couldn't imagine, like, I know one of the hospitals, I'm not going to name it, they are getting rid of PSWs on one of their floors. And they're putting in, so they're dropping it from 4 PSWs to 1 PSW, and they're bringing in 2 more nurses. And I said to her, remember, I said, and how do you think that's going to play out? And she was like, it's going to be a nightmare, because the nurses are not going to want to do the care, and it's going to be left up to the PSW to do all the care for all those patients. It's
yeah,
going to be an absolute. So I don't know where the heck that hospital's head is going, because we all know they got enough money.
well, I mean, LPNs can do personal care.
Well, they're the same thing as RPNs, RPNs, LPNs. Yeah.
RPNs can do personal care. So I guess that's their plan is to have RPNs do personal care. Well, that would be the trade-off. RPNs will need to start doing more of that job.
Yeah, but they don't, even then, they don't have
Well,
time.
I'm saying if the PSWs were to go away, sorry,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
would fall to the RPNs to do all of that. So
So
yeah,
we'd be going backwards
yeah,
in the building of healthcare and having all these different professions. We'd be going backwards. It's healthcare, guys, is a never ending spiral staircase where you don't know where the hell you're going, and you're just there for the ride, really, at the end of the day. And
that's
every
essential.
day something new gets thrown at us, and we just bat it back as best
Yeah,
as we
it's
possibly can.
exactly. That's exactly right. Yes,
But PSWs, you guys really truthfully are worth the effort, worth the fight. We do it every single day here at the association, even on the weekends, because you guys are worth it. Because if we don't stand up for you, who will? That's what I always think.
exactly.
Like, who else would be saying these things? So, what a great conversation, Ian, about title protection, about the rights of PSWs, about how it's a feminist issue in a lot of ways. This is a global issue when it comes to the feminist issue, not just in Canada.
No,
But this is definitely going to be something that will be at the forefront. I think it's going to be faster at the forefront than we think in relation to this, because without PSWs, our system will fail. It will fail very fast.
absolutely.
So,
A good conversation, and
great conversation.
remember,
Okay, guys, thanks so much for joining us on PSW Podcast for yet again an amazing conversation between Ian and myself. Remember that we are back next Friday at 11 a.m. for yet again another PSW podcast. But you can always join us on TikTok. Tonight, I will be live on TikTok for OPSWA After Dark, probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight, if you want to come out and join us there. We're on TikTok. I think I'm live about 2-3 times a week there. So if you guys want to join us on TikTok, you can. Hope to see you there. Have yourself a very wonderful weekend. Stay safe out there in the areas that got a lot of snow. I'm in the KW region and we got a ton of snow and it's still coming down. So stay safe out there. Remember, your life is not worth the risk. So, make sure you take care of yourself and stay safe. Remember, if you're not a member, head over to our website, www.opswa.ca. Click on memberships. If you're not a member, you're not protected. It's as simple as that.
Miranda, who do we have next week? Do we have a stay tuned for next week's podcast? I'm not sure.
No, we do not have any staging for next week's podcast. It's the week after.
Okay, so
that he's going to be
next
on.
week's topic will be announced, so stay tuned.
Exactly. All
Okay.
right, guys. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful weekend. And with that, we're going to say, OPSWA out.